Our name is ultimately our brand. I always say that if my name is spoken in a room that I'm not in, I hope that it's not attached to a bunch of cuss words. That's the first thing. But I hope that, if my name is spoken in a place that I'm not at, it'll at minimum bring a smile to someone's face, or it'll bring like, hey, that's someone we can trust. That's a place, just like a brand. You want brands you can trust that are going to deliver for you and give you the results that you need. And that's what the association, I hope, is.
Welcome to Be a Baller, where we're building a lifelong legacy for our families, communities, and the world. Your host, Coach Tim Brown, is excited for you to join him on this journey. On each episode, we'll be talking about how to be intentional about building a lasting legacy. We'll be exploring what it means to leave a mark that goes beyond just our lives, but has a positive impact on those around us and even generations to come. So, if you're looking for inspiration, guidance, and practical tips on how to build a lasting legacy that makes a difference, then you're in the right place. So grab your earbuds, get comfortable, and let's dive in. It's time to be a baller.
Welcome to Be a Baller podcast. I'm your host, Coach Tim Brown, and I'm excited to have in the studio today a young man who's a real Ohio native, graduate of Mifflin High School and also the Ohio State University. This is Ralph Smithers Jr. He's a community leader and corporate professional dedicated to helping others become the best version of themselves. His role at Encova Insurance, he leads efforts in inclusion, belonging, and community engagement. Ralph is deeply involved in Central Ohio through multiple boards and advisory roles and has been widely recognized for his leadership and service. He lives in New Albany, Ohio, with his lovely wife, Pam, and the proud father of 3 young adult children. Get ready to be inspired by a man who's building bridges, creating impact, and showing us all what it means to be a real baller. Let's welcome Ralph Smithers Jr. to the show.
Wow, thank you.
You are a real baller, man. I read that bio. I'm like, oh my goodness.
Well, I'll tell you what, since we met, I subscribed to the podcast.
Good.
Listened to everyone that you've had. I know that I'm in the presence of greatness and have a very, very big shoes to fill with all the people that came before me. And my goal is just not to mess it up.
Well, I appreciate that. No, you're right there in this whole legacy concept. Before we get into what you're doing now, I always ask persons to take us back to your roots. Can you take us back to your roots and what it was like growing up in Columbus and how did that shape who you are today?
Sure. So I grew up on the northeast part of Columbus, where what we know now as Easton, but what I knew as mostly farmland.
Right.
It was much different then than what it was today. But as you referenced, I'm a alum of Mifflin High School, so I'm really proud of being part of the Columbus public school system. I attended Cassidy and Ennis Elementary, as well as Mifflin for middle school, junior high. And it was a very transitional time. I was in school when busing started. So we went from kind of a segregated system to kind of a new system. And, there were definitely a lot of wonderful experiences and people that shaped my life. But I'm just really proud to be a Columbus native. And I've been here my whole life, and I love the city, and I thrive in trying to make it better.
Oh, yeah. Who were some of your early influences? Maybe some teachers that help guide your values and sense of purpose?
Sure. So the first thing I want to do is give credit to my parents. My parents and my family. They are amazing. And I know that we talk a lot about legacy here. And I'm always thinking about how I can live up to the legacy that was set up for me. As you referenced, I'm a junior, and I always go out of my way to say junior because Ralph Sr., he had a really great career in city government. He was once the development director for the city of Columbus. He worked for a couple of mayors right in the mayor's office. And I know that whenever I go out, it's not just my name. I've got to be conscious about holding up his good name too. My mom was a teacher, so they were very helpful to have that kind of influence, and a blessing, because I know not everyone has that. And I've got amazing aunts and uncles that have done great things too. So that was my main influence, but certainly I can think of various people that I met along the way that had an impact, especially coaches.
What sports did you play?
I was a football player.
Okay.
Yeah. Now you would.
Down, huh?
Yeah. Well, so my journey was, I didn't end up having the journey that I had set out to have.
Right.
This surprises a lot of people, but I was a very, very late bloomer. I didn't get my growth spurt until after I graduated from high school.
Okay.
So when I showed up in ninth grade at 5'3", 103 pounds, I knew, I knew it wasn't going to turn out the way that I wanted. And in fact, my freshman year, I opted to be a team manager.
Okay, right.
Because I knew I wasn't going to be able to work with that. So I come back my sophomore year, and I probably gained 3 pounds, and it's still the same, but I stuck with it.
Okay.
And, my junior year, I think my driver's license when I was 16 said it was like 5'6", 135. I thought I was getting pretty big then. And now I'm 6'2", right? So go figure. But at least, at least it let me, I figured that was my lesson, that I better focus on the books, because I wasn't going to be playing in an NFL.
Right. I know also you're a strong man of faith. Can you talk about your faith journey and how that faith foundation guides you today?
Sure. So very, very blessed to have really grown up in the church. We used to fill a couple pews at St. Paul AME. Our whole family did, so it was always a family affair. And that was my mom's side of the family was there, and my dad's side of the family was just a couple blocks away over at Mount Vernon AME. Okay. So we had both sides of our family were kind of in that same mind. And I think that for me, faith is what keeps me glued together. There's so many disappointments and setbacks that life presents, and we all face them. But I think having faith is what keeps us all glued together and keeps us sane. And I think that for me is my journey. And I think it also provides guidance into our decision making. As they say, do the right thing. Right. We get confronted with a lot of decisions where if you go one way, you get one outcome, you go the other way, you get a different outcome. And, I think my faith journey has helped keep me on a road to keep me safe, keep me glued together, and just try to set a good example for others.
Good stuff. You graduated from Mifflin High School, then you went to Ohio State, where you were an active member of the Minority Moral Scholars program. What were some defining moments during that time?
Yeah, that's a great question. So as we record this, we know that actually the moral program is going to continue, but a lot of the programs that were in place have been decimated with recent cuts. But two things about that. First, I met on day one some of the very best friends I have in my whole life that are still my friends today. And the very first day I walked into campus to the early arrival programs that they had back then. And those are my friends for life and have had a huge impact in some of the different things I'm involved with even to this very day. But the other thing and the greatest blessing was receiving a scholarship. And I always call that the great blessing of my life, because I was, I'll just say this, C's get degrees, right? So that was definitely me as a college student. I have to.
The only one.
I have to just call it for what it is. And even in high school, I was not a straight A student. I mean, I probably could have been a better student than I actually was. But when I was accepted into that program, and I'm going to pull out a name that you probably know. Kathy Espy was one of the people interviewing me. And I just remember her just saying, you're really, really close to not being eligible for this. And I got that message. And I know, when a lot of my friends were just doing whatever they wanted their senior year. I was buckling down to make sure I could get that. So I count that as one of the great blessings in my life. But the way that really translates is that I was able to graduate without any debt. And, that can allow you to be a homeowner and do all those other things. But even more importantly, I think that was probably one of the key things that happened for me that really made service a priority. And this was not in any bio or anything, but one thing that I had, since I was such a close call, I said, one day I'm going to pay them back. I'm going to pay them back. I'm going to pay back all these scholarships with interest. And with a good friend of mine who started the Bucking the Trend Scholarship at Ohio State.
Bucking the Trend.
I was able to pay that thing back a couple times over with interest. And I said, hey, the C's might get degrees, but they're also your donors too. So I'm really proud of that. And just going back to Kathy Espy, she passed away a few years ago, but I just I knew her. She's a family friend. And I happened to share that story with her because I don't think she knew about the scholarship part. And I just said, I just want to thank you for giving me a chance. And this is what I've done with it. So I hope others can follow suit.
You mentioned the name of the scholarship, Bucking the Trend, and I'm sure there's a backstory to that. What inspired for that name?
Absolutely. So the scholarship, and, this is in flux right now with all the changes that have happened, but the scholarship was awarded to young men who were active with the Todd Bell Center at Ohio State. So we were trying to get at young men that were just like ourselves. And, the trend lines are not good for African-American men, Black men of color. And the trends of, we don't want anyone to not be able to graduate having the ability, but maybe just coming short on a few dollars to get over the finish line, or having the support system to, when you run into a little trouble, you're able to go to someone that can, help you out. So the trend that we were trying to buck were just all those negative trends that would keep people from being successful. Sometimes just a little, just throw a little line out there is all that's needed. And that becomes a multiplier, once they get their degree and really contribute to society.
That's good. Being at Ohio State, why did you choose to major in finance, insurance, and how's that field help you serve others?
Yeah, that is a great question. So I want to start out by saying I had no idea what I wanted to do. I thought maybe I wanted to be in some sort of sports thing like sports medicine or maybe engineering. But in my first year at Ohio State, I realized that I didn't have the aptitude. It was either aptitude or interest or a combination of both. But I tell people that my freshman year, I pulled an all-nighter pairing chromosomes. Like we cut out pictures of chromosomes and had to pair them together. And I said, I can't. I am not interested in this. Right. And then I took an engineering class, and all we did was draw renderings of bolts and things like that. I'm like, I don't care about this. So I just took it was sort of a desperate move at the time because I didn't really have anyone that did anything in the private sector. Those opportunities weren't there. So I just picked finance because I thought it was the broadest. It gave me a lot of choices in case something else came up. And at the same time this was happening, I just randomly applied for a job at an insurance company to work in a call center. So I've been in insurance since I was 19 years old, and I enjoyed it so much I decided to add insurance to my major, and I'm still in that field all these years later.
What a story. When we're on the podcast, we always talk about you can't be what you can't see.
Right.
Some of those areas you were talking about, if you don't see anybody, it looks like you that's in those areas. And so one of the things we try to do here is let young people know, or people know there's different areas, that now you know somebody in that area.
Right.
Now you can do that. You can do that thing. At Encova, you have led inclusion and community engagement. How do you make sure those efforts have a real lasting impact?
Yeah, that's hard to measure sometimes. I think that you can always look at certain data to see who you're impacting and how representation changes and if people are getting promoted or, different things like that. But, our numbers are not real big to begin with, so the numbers don't move. So I think that we just have to rely on stories of impact. And, for me, it's helping people maybe see in them things that they didn't see themselves. And sometimes if you're all alone and you don't have a place to connect with other people that have your same sensibilities, you can easily get lost. So I think one of the things our programs do is help people connect across the organization. A lot of us are remote, so it helps people even connect across geography. And when it comes to the community, it's sort of the same thing. We try to, through our foundation, we try to support different causes and so forth. And just, I think the impact, money is great, but, there's not enough corporate philanthropy to solve all the world's problems. We would fall very short if we even if we pooled all the funds together. But for me, impact is taking time to get to know the stakeholders, talking to them, sometimes serving on boards. And at the end of the day, just being in a position to help make connections. A lot of times we run into organizations that are doing almost the same exact thing and they're not aware of each other. So sometimes I can be a connector and help them multiply their impact.
I know in the community, you're very involved in the community, serving on a long list of community boards. Why is that investment so important to you? Why is it so important to you to be a part of those boards?
Yeah, so going way, way back to college or just coming out of college, I was looking at my resume and I thought, this resume is not that good. It's not going to get me to the places that I want to be. And of course, my resume was just the same as any other college student. So that was probably being harsh. But way back when, I just set a goal for myself that I'm going to try to do one thing each year that is worthy of inclusion on my resume. And I found that service has kind of been a way to do that. And one of the things about the boards that I've had a chance to be on is that you're contributing both time, talent, and treasure. But if you are, you're helping that organization, making sure they're running right, helping them with decisions, helping them make connections to the community, meeting wonderful people that are serving alongside of you. And I've just found that to be a great multiplier and find it to be very rewarding. And I think, for me, sometimes that kind of work can help fill in gaps. I've been doing it for a long time. There's times that you get into your career where I don't know if I'm getting bored with my job or I'm ready to do something else. And sometimes, all the time, you get opportunities to do things that you wouldn't get to do on your day job, and it can be a real career multiplier.
I know you're being in the position that you're in. I know your phone rings off the hook for people. I need help. Can you do this for me? Is on this board? The question becomes is what guides your decision on where to invest your time and energy?
Yeah, that's great. Well, the first thing I do, and I have a few people that will tell me that I need to do better at this, is I go till my calendar gets full, which isn't the best way. I try to help as much as I can, and that isn't the best thing to do. But I try to get to know and get involved with whatever cause I might be approached to do. And actually, and this is a little contrary to what a lot of people might say, a lot of people will just jump into things where their passions align. Right. And I have discovered new passions by stretching myself and getting involved in things that I would have probably not thought of myself doing. So one of the things I do is I look at who else is on the board and I'm like, hey, there might be some great people that I can make connections with. I also will look at my own profile and say, where am I deficient? What can I be better at? So I'll give you an example, and I've used this more than once, even among my colleagues. I'm on the Lincoln Theater Board.
Okay.
And, I love sports. And, if you ask me about art, I'm not really the best representation. So I said, I have a deficiency here. And an opportunity came to serve on that board. And I thought, this is a good stretch for me. Mm-hmm. And now I have a whole new level of appreciation. Mm-hmm. And I can also bring sensibilities to that room that I might take for granted as a insurance finance guy mm-hmm. in a room full of people that are mostly artists. Yeah. So I can help bring a little, I guess, diversity is how you define that, to those spaces to kind of make, enhance outcomes.
Well, just listening to you talk, it sounds like you were made for that diversity role, because that's kind of what you do, as you just explained it.
Yeah, it's hard to. I think you're right, and it's hard to believe because I've had other. I spent most of my career doing technical insurance roles, so I probably know more about homeowners insurance mm-hmm. and auto insurance and things like that than some of the things I do now. But it's nice to be able to have that, have things change up every now and then, because it gets boring after a while.
You talked a lot about relationships and building those relationships. Can you share with some young people maybe listening how important those relationships are?
Oh, gosh. Yeah. Thank you for asking. So I have a couple of pillars that I sort of stand on. And I think one, and a lot of people who know me would agree, I think it is super, super critical to cultivate relationships. When you meet someone, in my context, I don't just get a business card. I will not only follow up maybe with a connection somewhere on LinkedIn or social media, but let's sit down and get coffee. Let's learn about each other. And I have found that practicing that and doing that hundreds and hundreds of times over many years, you start to get to know a lot of people, and you graduate from just cultivating relationships of being a connector, because you learn that, hey, this person has the chocolate and someone else has the peanut butter. Let's bring them together and we'll have something special.
Wow, that's good. That's good. Throughout your community work, can you share a moment when you saw a breakthrough or real change that made you proud, where you say, yeah, I was a part of that?
Yeah, there's been a few. I was on the Urban League board for 2 terms, and I can remember a time, especially when I first got to the organization, where it was hard. There were some financial challenges, and just trying to figure out how to get not just serve the people that we want to serve, but just be viable so we can keep going. And I was part of that board during a very transitional period when we had the annual conference, but still had to deal with some legacy challenges, and it's really rewarding for me. Not taking any personal credit, but working as a team with some other really committed people to help an organization, thrive, right. Where there's programs going on all the time, and, people are being helped. And, that's one that just, immediately comes to mind. But I found similar opportunities in all the different places where I've been able to serve.
I know you have a demanding schedule. You got your family, board leadership, wellness, and all those things. What's your strategy for keeping it all in balance?
Well, there's a matter of debate how, if I'm really achieving that or not. But as I suggested earlier, the first thing is my calendar, right? So I am a real stickler about not just putting things on the calendar, but managing my calendar and not just operating like, oh, I just got an alert, it's time to go to the next place, but sitting down on Sunday evening and, okay, what do I have to do this week? And being strategic and purposeful about what I can do. And one priority I tend to prioritize people over process. So if there's an opportunity to engage with people, I'll put that up higher as a priority. Obviously, we have to prioritize the things that our employer needs us to accomplish, and I also try to prioritize things that I can have the most impact. I definitely say no. People say I probably should say no more often, but I've also been really purposeful about trying to get good at the art of making an appearance, because I think being present is really important. And there are times where there are 2 or 3 things happening in the same time, and you're like, they all are pretty close. How do I thread the needle, make it to all 3, and learning how to, plan that out, and sometimes be able to show up in 3 different places with things that are happening all at the same time, and satisfy all the stakeholders, and go home and know that you did your best.
Then you have to go home and see wife Pam now.
Yeah.
She on the couch.
Then we start all over again.
Got that list.
Start all over again.
All got that list. As we come around the corner, let's talk about legacy and also recognition, because you received numerous awards and recognition. What do these honors represent to you?
That's a great question. So I don't get too it's always appreciated. Anytime that every single case, in fact, I always say that if you're going to try to give me an award, you better surprise me, because I won't show up if I think something like that's going to happen.
Right.
But I think that we all, I would, if anyone's listening to this looking for direction or advice, I would say never, ever do anything in the spirit of service with an expectation of receiving something in return. Do it because you want to, do it because you believe in the cause, but never do it because you expect someone to do something for you. So I operate that way. And, in those cases where you've just done your best, you've given it all, and you just think, well, that's what I came here to do. If someone wants to single you out and recognize you for that, that is very, very, very meaningful. And, it really moves me, but I certainly don't do anything with the intent for something like that to happen. But when it happens, I'm surprised. There's been a few cases where someone says, hey, we want to do this. And I'm like, are you sure? You want to, maybe you should talk to so-and-so or do something like that. But it's always a blessing to be recognized when you really intend just to do your best and don't mind doing it in obscurity.
Amen. What does building a lifelong legacy mean to you, and what do you hope your legacy will be?
Great question. So the first thing is, it's my intent to be working and writing this legacy until the last day. So I may not be around to see whatever last little scratch I made in making that legacy. That's going to be for others to decide if it was worthwhile, or I just want to make sure I'm pushing constantly to do my best. But I suppose that a few things that I would hope, are an outcome of all the efforts. I hope that people would say, hey, if I needed some advice, or I could go talk to Ralph. He would take the time to listen to me. He would listen without judgment. He would ask a few questions, and, maybe a few nuggets in there. I would hope that people would say, hey, he saw things in me that I didn't see in myself. And as a result of that, I pursued that, and my life is so much better. I hope that would be. I would hope that, he was really intentional about his time, talent, and treasure, and the things that he invested in. And I hate talking about myself in the third person, but I think I have to do it that way. That, he made an impact, and we appreciate that. And then hopefully my kids will be proud of me. Hopefully they can say, hey, we saw what he did, and we have an example to follow, just like I feel like I had.
Good. Well, you've been reading my notes, because my next question was about the children.
Yes.
You talked about the name earlier.
Yeah. I intentionally made sure that my sons had a different name, because it gets a little confusing. The first time I applied for credit, my credit file and my dad's credit file were all intermingled. Thankfully, he paid his bills, so it wasn't a problem for me, but it could be a little confusing sometimes.
Think about that name. What do you want your children and that next generation to remember about how you add it? I always talk about in the book that I wrote, I talk about how important the name is.
Mm-hmm.
I always tell young people, you have to add value to the name.
Right.
You know, if someone like your dad, mom, they bless you with that name. Now you have to add value to the name. And then secondly, you have to protect the name.
Right.
You know, you have to protect our name. So what would you say to in regards to that?
Yeah, our name is ultimately our brand. Mm-hmm. I always say that if my name is spoken in a room that I'm not in, I hope that it's not attached to a bunch of cuss words. That's the first thing. But I hope that, if my name is spoken in a place that I'm not at, it'll at minimum bring a smile to someone's face, or it'll bring like, hey, that's someone we can trust. That's a place, just like a brand. You want brands you can trust that are going to deliver for you and give you the results that you need. And that's what the association, I hope, is.
As we come around the corner, I have talked to people about you.
Okay. They didn't have hopefully they said nice things.
This is what they say about you, that you're a humble man. And I know that's real just from our conversation, that humility. I think people really don't even know the impact that you're having in this community, because you're not out there, patting your chest or saying, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, but very humble, service-minded, for sure, all about servant leader, about serving people and helping people. And then being a man that's a man of his word, that commitment. If people say, I'm just telling what people say about you now. They say that if Ralph says he's going to do something, he's going to do it, and he'll tell you if he can't do it, he can't do it. And then the last thing and most important thing I've heard is that everything you do in an excellent way. An excellent way. There ain't no half-heart about it. It's going to be done, not just done. It's going to be done, in the right way. Did I get that right?
Well, I'm going to say this. We may have to pause this so I can compose myself. That's, that's really touches my soul. And, I never, ever want anything to be about me. I want things to be about the result. And, we can all, we just talked about branding. We can choose our brand. What do you want to be associated for? You want to be a winner or you want to be a loser? You want to be a person that they hear you coming and they cross the street so they don't have to deal with you, or they come to see you. So I'm very, very honored and flattered. And I'm just going to keep chopping, keep pushing, and not try to don't get caught up into that. Right. But I think that I get a lot of reward, much more reward about lifting other people up. And if that's the outcome, then I'll take it.
Oh, yeah, you have to take it, because that's what it is.
Okay,
no getting around it.
We'll go with that.
No getting around it. Well, Ralph, I want to thank you for being on the show today. And thank you for sharing your testimony and just how good God has been. How you're definitely a faithful man, faith-filled man who's been directed by the Lord, who's ordered your steps, And I like that C's get degrees. Look at what God has done. God has done.
I am really thankful. I'm really thankful for you to invite me. And when I saw the roster of all the people that preceded me, I almost wanted to say, are you sure you want to do this? But hey, if you get the opportunity, you got to run with it. Yeah. Fake it until you make it if necessary. But I just really want to thank you for what you're doing. And this is a great vehicle for people to learn, to be inspired, and to be part of this is a tremendous honor. And I thank you for that.
So that's all we have time for today. So we want to thank our guests, and I pray that the audience received that wisdom, some intentional nuggets that they can use on a daily walk. So thanks again, always, for listening to Be a Baller podcast. And don't forget to subscribe to the show and continue being a baller. Thanks, Ralph.
Thank you.
If you've enjoyed this episode, please share it with family and friends. The Be a Baller podcast is available on all major podcast platforms. This podcast was created by Coach Tim Brown and recorded and edited by the video production class of Worthington Christian High School. Be sure to come back next week as we continue to discuss on how to build a lifelong legacy. Until then, don't forget to be a baller.